Everyone wants to know whether the United States government is going to buy Bitcoin. The Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, you have been at the forefront of pushing this idea. I think you stood up in Nashville and you literally had a proposed bill. What are the odds? What is the process for us to get there? And ultimately, do you think we will buy Bitcoin?
Well, let me start with the fact that we already own Bitcoin. There is Bitcoin in the U.S. asset forfeiture accounts. We're trying to find out how much Bitcoin and whether they are fully surrendered to U.S. custody. We think that could be the basis for the first year's installment of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. We think the United States has held about 200,000 Bitcoin in asset forfeiture. What we don't know is how much of that the Biden administration was selling right before the Trump administration took office. So we have inquiries to the U.S. Marshal Service. I have talked to Pam Bondi about it. We are trying to find that information out now.
On that specifically, Bitcoiners will say, well, just look on the blockchain, would kind of be the answer. But this is obviously much more complex. Why can't people figure out how many we own?
Yeah, great question. This should be easy to figure out. It should be easy to figure out why a federal agency has 2 times more credit cards issued than there are employees in the agency. I mean, there's so much failure of just simple accounting and business practices in the federal government that it would shock you. It is inexcusable.
So odds that we get the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve?
My bets are that you'll see a state have a Bitcoin Strategic Reserve before the federal government. States are incubators of innovation. We're seeing the United Arab Emirates purchase Bitcoin. You're going to look at some of the sovereign wealth funds around the world who are not as tied up in a democratic republic like we are, be able to just make it so. The old Captain Picard statement on Star Trek, where he used to just say, make it so. They can do that in the UAE. Of course, we can't do that here. But there's a possibility that some of these things can be begun without statutory authorization. So we'll see what the White House is thinking about that. And then we'll hope to augment it in a way that provides authority by statute for the U.S. government to take gold certificates, which we hold. We hold them at about a 1974 value, which was, I don't know, $46 an ounce or some such thing, and then bring them to market value and then use that to buy Bitcoin. If we did that, we could probably buy 200,000 Bitcoin every year for 5 years, hold them for 20 years, and not use a single new taxpayer dollar to do it.
In a groundbreaking turn of events today, Senator Cynthia Lummis took center stage by reintroducing the Bitcoin Act at a Bitcoin-focused conference hosted by the Bitcoin Policy Institute. Joining her were influential figures like Saylor and Vivek Ramaswamy. Welcome back to Investocracy Crypto.
And so that's where you can come in, literally talk to your senators and representatives, help them understand that Bitcoin is digital gold and why. Explain to them the scarcity of Bitcoin, the fact that Bitcoin is completely non-controlled by people, that it is utterly and completely decentralized, that it's infinitely divisible, that it has superior Bitcoin presence, that these are things that can be stored in wallets safely, whether stored for the federal government or by individuals on their own behalf. These are all things that are still questions that are outstanding in a lot of people's minds. So to the extent that sometimes we all, and I'm guilty of this myself, become a little bit of an echo chamber. You know, I'm always talking to advocates, and I'm an advocate of doing this too. I have to spend more time talking to people who either don't understand it and are open-minded, or are opposed but they don't know why. And there are a lot of those in the U.S. House and U.S. Senate. Now, I think that we're going to get a lot more help from this administration in making this an issue that's important to the president and the White House, because the people who are now at Treasury, who are at the regulatory agencies, are both knowledgeable and supportive. So we have a bigger cast of policymakers that are favorably inclined. We have to deploy them, but please deploy yourselves. Make yourselves advocates of a Bitcoin strategic reserve if you feel strongly, like I do, that when it is one of our strategic reserves, just like we have an oil strategic reserve, how many of you knew we had a strategic cheese reserve? Raise your hand if you knew that. A few people do, okay. We have a strategic gold reserve. We hold about 5% of the world's gold in physical gold, in addition to those gold certificates. So make sure that this is not some out-of-the-box, unique reserve, that it can be part and parcel of other commodities that we believe are important for the United States to have as part of our portfolio that is fully diversified, whether it's land in the form of Bureau of Land Management, land, national parks, national forests, and so forth, or whether it's commodities like gold, oil, cheese, Bitcoin.
Senator Lummis made waves by teasing the Bitcoin reserve hype, promising big things are coming and reasserting her commitment, exclaiming she is for real this time. It seems she's determined to make a lasting impact after the bill faced setbacks in the previous congressional session due to limited bipartisan support and doubts on its viability.
When we see the administration come in, we see the regulation treatment of this industry change. It feels like that is us putting a flag in the ground and saying anyone in the world that would like to participate in the United States economy, in the U.S. capital markets, and operate in this industry, we're kind of open for business. That is the exact opposite of what we saw for years. And we saw people run all around the world.
Yep.
It does feel like we are a little behind, because there are places like the Dubais, the Singapores. They have created sandboxes of testing and innovation. They have created no tax zones. They have, really gone out and said, we want to incentivize this industry to come here. What do you think the United States should be doing on that front to maybe play catch up and get these people coming back to the United States and wanting to build these businesses and these technologies here?
President Trump has articulated that as a goal for our country. He wants Bitcoin mining in the U.S. He wants to onshore people who chose to organize a digital asset business overseas because our regulatory framework was hostile. He wants to make this an environment where this industry can thrive. He did an executive order basically overturning Staff Accounting Bulletin 121 at the SEC. He set up a group, a working group within the executive branch to prioritize digital assets. David Sachs is the they're calling him sort of the crypto czar. He's coordinating with appointed officials who understand this asset class. And so you've got a Treasury Secretary who understands it. You've got folks at the SEC, the CFTC, the OCC, the alphabet soup of financial service regulatory entities who understand these issues and are taking a more positive, business-friendly approach.
The proposed legislation outlines a strategic Bitcoin reserve overseen by the Treasury, focused on secure storage and incorporating measures for forks and airdrops over a 5-year retention period. Not to mention the introduction of a Bitcoin purchase program aiming to acquire up to 1 million BTC over the next 5 years. But before going any further, if you made it this far into the video, thank you. These videos take a lot of effort and time to make, so if you enjoyed them, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This goes a long way in helping us grow. That said, back to the video.
What else can everyone in this room do in terms of continuing to push this forward? You know, I feel like there's a couple of politicians that are fighting the Bitcoin fight, and I can only imagine the bewildered looks that you have from your colleagues when you start talking about a strategic reserve or you start talking about some of these things. Money is one component. It also feels like there have been moments in time over the last 4 or 5 years where the community has rallied together and, you know, there's a bill that's going to get passed and they really get loud online. And it seems like that also has an impact. Are there certain things that you can kind of share with everyone as to how they help you do your job better?
Well, certainly, your engagement on social media helps a lot. Your engagement with politicians help a lot. Sometimes as I mentioned, we're an echo chamber. So we think that just because we're all for a Bitcoin strategic reserve, that everybody is. And so it was kind of a setback for me when my beloved chairman of the banking committee, Tim Scott, gently said, we're starting with stablecoins. We're going to market structure. And we might need to put a pin for a little while in a Bitcoin strategic reserve because we're not there yet. In other words, Senator Scott is talking with our Senate colleagues who don't want to tell me that they're not ready to vote for a Bitcoin strategic reserve, but they will tell him that they're not ready. And so it was hard for me to hear that my colleagues, even on my side of the aisle, are not ready. But it was one of the most helpful conversations that he could have had with me. So we're now identifying offices on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans, that we can go sit down and have the conversation with.
The resurgence of the Bitcoin Act under Senator Lummis's guidance, coupled with the recent executive order by President Trump, sets the stage for a promising future in the cryptocurrency realm. But what do you think? Share your thoughts. And finally, if you would like to know more about cryptocurrencies or specifically Bitcoin, go ahead and click on the next video on your screen. See you there.